Have you ever noticed that the older you become, the less people ask what you're feeling, and the more they assume you should already have all the answers? That quiet expectation can become a prison. If you've ever looked in the mirror and wondered why you still feel misunderstood despite everything you've survived, then stay with me. And if something in these words feels strangely familiar, consider subscribing, not because you owe anyone a click, but because sometimes the right conversation arrives exactly when we're ready to hear it. I want to tell you something that most older men never hear. Strength is not disappearing from your life. It's changing its shape. Many men spend decades believing that power looks loud. They think it's found in winning every argument, proving every point, being respected in every room, or making sure nobody mistakes their kindness for weakness. Then life happens. Children grow up, friends disappear, careers end, the phone rings less often. One morning you wake up, and without anyone announcing it, you've entered a different season of life. That transition confuses many men. Not because they're weak, because nobody prepared them for it. I've sat across from men in their 60s and 70s who looked completely calm on the outside. Their posture was steady, their voice was measured, they smiled politely. But after 20 minutes of conversation, the sentence would finally come. I don't know who I am anymore. Not because they had failed, because the identity they built for 40 years depended on being needed. Think about that for a moment. A man can spend his entire adult life solving problems for everyone else, his family, his workplace, his community. He becomes the dependable one, the provider, the protector, the man who carries the emotional weight without asking anyone to notice. Then one day, people stop needing him in exactly the same way. Suddenly, the silence becomes louder than the noise ever was. Many men mistake that silence for loneliness. Sometimes it is. But often, it's something much deeper. It's the first time in decades they've been left alone with themselves. And that's frightening. Because when life becomes quiet, every unanswered question you've successfully buried starts knocking on the door. Did I matter beyond my responsibilities? Would anyone still choose me if I stopped performing? Who am I when there is nobody left to impress? Those questions aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that you're finally standing face to face with the person you've been too busy to meet. This is where Stoicism begins, not as a collection of quotes shared online, not as emotional suppression, and certainly not as pretending nothing hurts. Real Stoicism begins when a man stops running from his own mind. That's very different. People often misunderstand emotional control. They imagine a man who never cries, never reacts, never feels disappointment. But I've never met a psychologically healthy man who felt nothing. I've only met men who learn the difference between feeling something and allowing it to control every decision they make. Those are not the same thing. One evening, an older gentleman told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "When I was young, I believed being respected meant people listened when I spoke." Then he smiled. "Now I think real respect begins when I don't have to raise my voice at all." There was no bitterness in his words, only peace. That sentence stayed with me because it revealed something most younger men don't understand. Age doesn't automatically make you wise, but it gives you countless opportunities to choose wisdom. Some men grow older and become angry. Every disappointment hardens them. Every betrayal becomes proof that people cannot be trusted. Every change feels like something being stolen from them. Others experience the very same losses, the same heartbreak, the same unfairness. Yet somehow they become calmer, gentler, more difficult to provoke. Not because life treated them better, because somewhere along the journey they discovered a quiet truth. You don't have to fight every battle simply because someone invites you into one. That realization changes everything. It changes the way you walk into a room, the way you respond to criticism, the way you look at rejection, the way you sleep at night, and perhaps most importantly, the way you look at yourself when nobody else is watching. Because eventually every man reaches an age where reputation matters less than peace. The question is, will you recognize that moment when it arrives? Or will you spend the rest of your life defending a version of yourself that no longer needs protecting? I want you to imagine something. It's late in the evening. The house is finally quiet. The television is on, but you're not really watching it. Your phone is beside you. You pick it up, scroll for a while, put it back down, then pick it up again a few minutes later. Not because you're expecting a message, because you're hoping to feel less alone. Most men would never admit that out loud. Instead, they say they're just passing the time. But deep down, there's another truth. They're searching for proof that they still matter. Here's what I've learned after listening to countless stories from men who have lived long, complicated lives. Loneliness rarely begins when people leave. It begins when a man slowly abandons himself. That sounds harsh, doesn't it? But stay with me. For years, you may have measured your worth by what you produced, how hard you worked, how much you earned, how many people depended on you, how often you sacrificed your own comfort so someone else's life became easier. Those things deserve respect. They reflect commitment, responsibility, character. But they were never meant to become your entire identity. Because life has a quiet way of removing every title you've ever worn, one by one. Employee, manager, business owner, husband, father with children at home, provider. Eventually, you're left standing without the labels that once introduced you to the world. And that's the moment many men panic. Not because they've lost everything, because they suddenly realize they never spent enough time discovering the man underneath the titles. Stoicism asks a question that feels almost uncomfortable. Who are you, when no one is asking anything from you? Most people rush to answer that question with achievements. I'm successful. I raised a family. I built a career. Those are beautiful parts of your story, but they are not the whole story. Because one day, those chapters close. Then what? I remember speaking with a retired engineer. For 42 years, people came to him with problems. He was respected, needed. His knowledge carried weight. The day after retirement, he woke up at the same hour as always, made coffee, put on a clean shirt. Then he realized nobody was waiting for him. He told me the silence was unbearable, not because he missed work, because he missed significance. Do you see the difference? Many men think they fear getting older. They don't. They fear becoming invisible. That's a very human fear. Every person wants to believe their existence leaves a mark. But here's where Stoicism quietly changes the conversation. It reminds you that your value was never supposed to depend on constant recognition. Think about a great oak tree. It doesn't announce its strength. It doesn't argue with the wind. It doesn't chase people down to convince them it's important. It simply stands, season after season, storm after storm. Its roots grow deeper precisely because it cannot control the weather above. Older men often spend too much energy trying to control things that have already changed. Adult children making their own choices, friends drifting away, technology moving faster than they can follow, a body that no longer responds the way it once did. These realities can feel unfair. Sometimes they are. But resisting reality doesn't make it disappear. It only exhausts the person resisting it. Acceptance is often misunderstood as giving up. It isn't. Giving up says, nothing matters. Acceptance says, this is real. Now what kind of man will I choose to be? Those are completely different attitudes. One creates bitterness, the other creates freedom. I've noticed something fascinating. The calmest older men I've ever met weren't the ones who had perfect lives. Some had experienced divorce. Others had buried people they loved. Some had lost businesses they spent decades building. A few had serious health challenges. None of them escaped suffering. What separated them wasn't luck. It was their relationship with suffering. They stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and quietly began asking, "What is this experience trying to teach me about myself?" That single shift transformed them. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly, like a river smoothing rough stone over many years. You begin speaking less because you no longer need to prove you're right. You begin listening more because you're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You begin smiling more, not because life has become easier, but because you've stopped arguing with every difficult moment life places in front of you. And here's the strange part. The quieter you become inside, the more people begin noticing your presence. Not because you're demanding attention, because genuine peace has a weight that confidence alone can never imitate. That's the kind of strength many younger men spend years searching for. And it's the kind of strength many older men don't realize they've been capable of all along. There is something I've noticed about older men that almost no one talks about. They don't always become quieter because they have less to say. Sometimes they become quieter because experience has taught them that not everyone deserves access to their inner world. When you're young, you often believe every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Someone judges you, you defend yourself. Someone doubts your intentions, you explain them. Someone criticizes your choices, you immediately begin building your case. It's exhausting, and one day, almost without realizing it, something changes. You recognize that explaining yourself to people who have already decided who you are rarely changes anything. It only drains your peace. That realization isn't arrogance, it's maturity. I remember meeting a man in his early 70s. He had kind eyes, but there was a steadiness about him that immediately stood out. During our conversation, he mentioned something that had happened years earlier. A close friend had spread false stories about him. At first, he wanted to confront him. He rehearsed every sentence in his mind. He imagined proving every accusation wrong. Then he stopped himself. He asked a simple question. If someone truly knows my character, do I need to convince them? The answer surprised him. No. And if someone refuses to know his character, no explanation would ever be enough. He didn't choose silence because he was defeated. He chose silence because his peace had become more valuable than winning. That is one of the hardest lessons a man can learn. Not every misunderstanding deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every invitation to conflict deserves your participation. Yet many men spend years living as though every criticism is an emergency. Think about how much emotional energy disappears that way. Hours replaying conversations, days imagining better responses, weeks carrying resentment towards someone who has already moved on. Meanwhile, life quietly continues without waiting. Stoicism asks you to notice something uncomfortable. How much of your suffering comes from what actually happened, and how much comes from the endless story you keep repeating about what happened? Those are very different things. The event might last 5 minutes. The memory can last 5 years. And every time you replay it, your body responds as though it's happening again. Your heart tightens, your jaw clenches, your breathing changes. The mind is incredibly powerful, but it becomes dangerous when it starts treating yesterday like today. I've heard older men say things like, I should have fought harder, I should have stayed, I should have left sooner, I should have become someone else. Those words carry enormous weight, but they also carry an impossible expectation. They assume you could have known then what only experience taught you later. That's not wisdom, that's self-punishment. You cannot judge your younger self using knowledge your younger self didn't yet possess. That doesn't excuse mistakes. It simply allows honesty without cruelty. And something remarkable happens when a man finally forgives himself. His shoulders relax, his voice softens. He stops competing with ghosts. He begins living in the present instead of constantly negotiating with the past. I've often wondered why certain older men become magnetic without trying. It isn't because they're wealthier. It isn't because they're louder. It isn't because they're trying to impress anyone. It's because they no longer carry the desperate need for external approval. There's a calm confidence in someone who knows his worth doesn't rise and fall with another person's opinion. Ironically, that is often when respect begins to find him. People trust emotional stability. They feel safe around someone who doesn't panic every time life becomes uncertain. That doesn't mean these men never feel pain. Of course they do. The difference is what they do with that pain. Instead of letting it define them, they allow it to deepen them. Instead of asking, how do I erase this chapter? They begin asking, who am I becoming because of this chapter? Those questions change a life. Not because they remove suffering, because they give suffering a direction. And perhaps that's one of the greatest hidden powers of Stoicism. It doesn't promise you'll avoid disappointment. It quietly teaches you that disappointment doesn't get the final word. Every difficult experience leaves something behind. Sometimes it's caution, sometimes it's compassion, sometimes it's boundaries you should have built years ago. Sometimes it's the realization that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. As you grow older, your greatest achievement may not be how many battles you won. It may be how many battles you wisely chose to walk away from. Because there comes a point in a man's life when preserving his character becomes far more important than protecting his pride. And that point changes everything. Can I tell you something that may feel uncomfortable? Some of the strongest men I've ever met still carry conversations that ended 20, sometimes 30 years ago. Not out loud, inside. A sentence they wish they had said, an apology they never received, a goodbye that happened too quickly, or the face of someone they loved who is no longer here. Life has a strange way of moving forward while the heart quietly lingers behind. From the outside, people see an older man who seems calm. They assume he's made peace with everything. But peace and silence are not the same thing. Many men become experts at looking composed while carrying rooms full of unfinished emotions. They learn to function. They learn to smile. They learn to keep moving. But inside, there are still locked doors they've never had the courage to open. Not because they're afraid of weakness, because they worry that if they finally allow themselves to feel everything they've buried, they may never stop feeling it. So they keep those doors closed, year after year, until something unexpected happens. A familiar song, a photograph tucked inside an old book, the scent of a place they haven't visited in decades. Suddenly, emotions they believed had disappeared return with surprising clarity. That isn't failure. That's how memory works. The heart doesn't organize pain according to a calendar. It remembers through moments, through sounds, through ordinary things that become extraordinary without warning. This is why Stoicism is so often misunderstood. People imagine it means becoming emotionally untouchable. It doesn't. It means refusing to let emotions become your prison. There is a difference. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every single day. At first, you barely notice the weight. Your body adapts. Your shoulders adjust. You tell yourself, this is just how life feels. But then one day, someone gently asks, why are you still carrying that? And for the first time, you realize you don't even remember what you packed inside. Many older men carry emotional burdens exactly like that. Old guilt, old resentment, old disappointments, old identities. None of them seem heavy because they've become familiar. But familiar isn't the same as healthy. Sometimes the hardest part of growing older isn't accepting wrinkles or grey hair. It's accepting that certain emotional habits have quietly followed you through every stage of your life. Perhaps you've always believed you must solve everyone else's problems before taking care of your own. Perhaps you've always felt responsible for keeping the peace, even when it cost you your own. Perhaps you've spent decades believing your value depended on how much you could endure without asking for support. Those beliefs often sound noble, but they can also become invisible chains. I've noticed that men who finally experience real inner peace don't suddenly become different people. They simply stop carrying responsibilities that never truly belong to them. They stop trying to control other people's choices. They stop measuring their worth by someone else's gratitude. They stop expecting fairness from a world that has never promised it. That isn't pessimism, it's clarity. And clarity has an interesting effect. It makes life feel lighter. Not because your circumstances change overnight, because you're no longer spending emotional energy fighting reality. There is another quiet lesson that age offers if you're willing to receive it. You don't have unlimited time. That thought frightens some people, but I've seen it do the opposite. I've watched it make men kinder, more patient, more willing to say, I love you, more willing to forgive, more willing to spend an afternoon with a grandchild instead of chasing another achievement that nobody will remember 10 years from now. Perspective changes priorities. When you're younger, time feels endless. You postpone conversations, you delay joy, you assume there will always be another chance. As the years pass, you begin understanding something precious. Life isn't asking you to become perfect, it's asking you to become present. To actually notice the morning sunlight, to enjoy coffee without rushing through it, to laugh without checking your phone, to sit with someone you love without secretly thinking about the next task waiting for you. Those moments seem small, until one day you realize, They were the moments that quietly became your life. Stoicism doesn't pull you away from those experiences, it pulls you deeper into them. Because when you stop wasting your energy arguing with the past and fearing every possible future, you finally become available for the only place life has ever existed, this moment. And there is a remarkable dignity in an older man who understands that, not because he has all the answers, but because he has finally stopped demanding certainty before allowing himself to live. That kind of peace cannot be purchased, it cannot be inherited, it can only be earned. One honest moment at a time. There is one truth that many older men spend their entire lives trying to avoid, not because it isn't obvious, because accepting it changes everything. You cannot control whether people appreciate you. You cannot control whether someone misunderstands your intentions. You cannot control whether your kindness is returned, whether your loyalty is remembered, or whether your sacrifices are acknowledged. For years, that realization can feel unfair. After everything you've given, shouldn't someone notice? Shouldn't someone say thank you? Shouldn't someone recognize the quiet battles you've fought? Of course, those thoughts are human. Every person wants to feel seen. But here's the question that slowly transforms a man's life. If no one ever applauded your character, would you still choose to be that man? Pause there for a moment, because that answer reveals more about your identity than any compliment ever could. I've met men who became deeply resentful because the world failed to reward them in the way they expected. They worked hard, they stayed loyal, they kept their promises, yet life still brought disappointment. Over time, they stopped giving, not because they had nothing left to give, but because they believed generosity had betrayed them. Then I've met other men with stories just as painful. Men who lost careers they loved, men whose marriages ended despite years of effort, men who buried lifelong friends, men who watched dreams quietly fade. And somehow, they remained gentle, not weak, gentle. There's a profound difference. Weakness gives up because it's exhausted. Gentleness chooses compassion even after experiencing pain. That kind of strength doesn't happen by accident. It grows every time a man decides that another person's behavior will not determine his own character. Think about how freeing that really is. If someone is rude, you don't have to become rude. If someone lies, you don't have to abandon honesty. If someone chooses anger, you don't have to carry that anger home with you. Imagine the emotional freedom hidden inside that idea. For so much of life, we react automatically. Someone criticizes us and we immediately become defensive. Someone dismisses us and we begin doubting ourselves. Someone rejects us and suddenly our confidence begins falling apart. But Stoicism quietly interrupts that cycle. It whispers something incredibly simple. You still get to choose. That choice may be the last true freedom no one can take from you. Not your age, not your health, not your finances, not another person's opinion. Only you decide what kind of man you become in response. I once spoke with an elderly widower who had spent more than 50 years with the same woman. After she passed away, people often asked him the same question. How do you keep going? They expected him to speak about courage, or faith, or discipline. Instead, he smiled softly and said something I'll never forget. I still wake up every morning with the opportunity to be the man she believed I was. Think about those words. He wasn't living to escape grief. He wasn't pretending the pain had disappeared. He was honoring the love they shared by continuing to live with integrity. That's not denial, that's purpose. And purpose is often what separates peaceful aging from bitter aging. Not having an easy life, having a meaningful one. As men grow older, the world quietly encourages them to shrink, to believe their best years are behind them, to think their wisdom is outdated, to assume they no longer have anything valuable to offer. Don't believe that. Experience has a language that youth cannot imitate, the calm voice that refuses unnecessary conflict, the patience that comes from surviving disappointment, the perspective earned through decades of mistakes, forgiveness, success, failure, and starting over. Those qualities are not signs that life is ending. They're evidence that life has been teaching you all along. The tragedy isn't growing older. The tragedy is reaching old age without recognizing the quiet treasure you've been collecting. Every scar, every difficult conversation, every loss, every unexpected beginning. Together, they have been shaping something far more valuable than status. They have been shaping your character. And character has a remarkable quality. Unlike appearance, unlike wealth, unlike reputation, it becomes more beautiful with time. Perhaps that's why truly wise older men don't spend much energy trying to look important. They've discovered something far greater. The deepest respect isn't demanded. It is quietly earned by the man who remains true to himself long after the applause has faded. And once you understand that, the world loses much of its power to disturb your peace. If you've stayed with me this long, I want to leave you with one final thought. Not a rule, not a slogan, just a quiet truth that took many men an entire lifetime to discover. One day, people will remember very little about what you owned. They won't remember the overtime hours you worked. They won't remember how many emails you answered, how many meetings you attended, or how many problems you solved before breakfast. Most of that will disappear into time. But they will remember something else, how they felt in your presence, whether you made them feel safe, whether your words brought calm instead of chaos, whether your actions matched your values, whether your character remained steady when life became difficult. That is the legacy Stoicism quietly builds. Not the legacy of being the toughest man in every room, the legacy of becoming the most trustworthy one. When I think about the older men who left the deepest impression on me, I rarely remember their achievements first. I remember how they carried themselves. There was no need to prove anything, no hunger for attention, no desperate need to win every conversation. They listened more than they spoke. When they did speak, people naturally leaned in, not because their voices were loud, but because their words had weight. That kind of presence cannot be learned from a motivational quote. It is shaped by years of choosing patience over impulse, reflection over ego, integrity over convenience. And perhaps that is why growing older can become one of the greatest gifts a man ever receives. Yes, your body changes, your energy changes, the world changes around you. But something else becomes possible. You stop chasing an image of success that was never fully yours. Instead, you begin building an inner life that no disappointment can easily destroy. There is extraordinary freedom in reaching the point where you no longer wake up asking, "How can I impress people today?" Instead, you quietly ask, "How can I live today in a way that allows me to respect the man I see in the mirror tonight?" Those two questions create completely different lives. One depends on the opinions of strangers, the other depends on your own conscience. And when your conscience becomes your compass, something remarkable happens. The fear of rejection begins to lose its grip. The need for constant validation becomes quieter. The urge to compare yourself with younger men, wealthier men, or more successful men slowly fades away. Not because you've stopped growing, because you finally understood that life was never a race against other people. It has always been a relationship with yourself. You begin appreciating simple moments that once seemed ordinary. A peaceful morning before the world wakes up. A conversation that doesn't need to be rushed. The sound of rain against the window. A walk where your mind finally grows quiet. A sincere smile from someone you love. Those moments don't seem extraordinary until you realize they are the very things you spent decades working for. And maybe that's the greatest irony. Many men spend the first half of life sacrificing peace in order to build a future, only to spend the second half trying to recover the peace they once gave away. You don't have to wait for another decade to begin protecting yours, not by withdrawing from life, not by becoming cold, but by becoming intentional, by choosing your words with care, by guarding your attention, by accepting what you cannot change while giving your best to what you still can. That is not surrender. That is strength in its most mature form. So if tonight you find yourself sitting quietly, wondering whether your best years are behind you, I hope you'll remember this. Your greatest contribution may never be another achievement. It may be the calm you've learned to create, the wisdom you've earned through hardship, the example you set simply by living with dignity. The world doesn't need older men who pretend they've never been broken. It needs older men who have been broken and still chose kindness, who have known disappointment and still chose integrity, who have experienced loss and still chose gratitude. Because those are the men who remind the rest of us that real strength isn't found in controlling the world around us, it's found in mastering the world within us. And if you can do that, then age is no longer something to fear. It becomes the quiet proof that your deepest power was never in your youth. It was in the wisdom you were slowly becoming all along. If these words spoke to something you've been carrying in silence, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the most meaningful conversations begin when one man realizes he isn't alone. And if you'd like to continue exploring this path of calm strength, consider subscribing. Until next time, take care of your mind, because it's the one place you'll live for the rest of your life.